We present to you Namco Museum Volume 3. This set was released in Japan on June 21st, 1996, and in North America on January 31st, 1997. The lineup consists of titles known to many gamers, along with some that are making their first appearances outside of Japan. We have Ms. Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Galaxian, Pole Position 2, Phozon, and the Tower of Druaga. The museum has undergone a major facelift and is for the better. The exhibit halls are now designed in themes related to each game, giving them a distinctive look. The load times to enter rooms and view promotional materials has been reduced. The zoom feature to view these materials has been sped up. The highlight of these exhibits is the Tower of Druaga board game. At the time I was producing this video, I found a listing for it on eBay, and boy, it is expensive. The soundtrack for roaming the museum and viewing the exhibits have been changed to a cheerful vibe. The game rooms are still like the ones in the previous volumes, but some have hidden surprises such as Pac-Man making an unexpected appearance in the can while the Misses and Chomp Chomp are dancing away, and Gilgamesh fighting Druaga with the latter enabled by a code. The lounge area in volumes 1 and 2 has been replaced by a library, theater, and a records kiosk. The library individually displays covers of NG magazine for better viewing. There's a photo gallery showing production of Galaxian cocktail cabinets. You can view drawings, sketches, and a mini comic from the Tower of Druaga. You can also view the updated list of arcade titles produced by Namco. Games in red text are featured in this volume. Games in gray text appeared in previous volumes. The theater contains 2 levels of seating where you'll see your favorite Namco characters seated. Here you can view slideshows of sprites for each game, which now includes a play button which animates some of them. You can also listen to each game's soundtrack and sound effects. The records kiosk keeps track of your top scores along with total play time, frequency of in-game occurrences, and an overall ranking of your total performance in each game, the last of which is a new feature. The game options have been simplified for Volume 3. Instead of a separate dip switch screen, you bring up a series of windows while the game is running to adjust each game's settings. This removes the need to reload the game like in the previous 2 volumes. Once again, for vertically oriented games that use a horizontal display, you can display artwork on the right side of the screen. Another improvement is that you can reset your game if you get off to a bad start. This was frustrating in volumes 1 and 2 because I was forced to kill off my lives or run out the clock in pole position. In my volume 2 video, I spoke about the off-screen space in Grobda and Xevious due to the greater number of horizontal resolution lines these games display versus the number the PlayStation handles. This is also the case for Dig Dug, but the action scrolls when moving up or down, making it less of a burden. Ms. Pac-Man uses compressed graphics just like Pac-Man and Super Pac-Man, and uses bezel-style artwork like in Pac-Man. You have the option to play the games with rotated controls if they're displayed in arcade vertical mode. This does not apply to Pole Position 2, as that is the only horizontal-oriented game in Volume 3. It offers a new playing perspective, though you'll want to switch back to the horizontal display after a few minutes of play. If you don't know this first game we will cover, then I hereby banish you from this realm. It's none other than Ms. Pac-Man. This 1982 mega hit is the oddest pick for this library. Why do you ask? It's because Namco was not directly involved in its development. I touched upon this in the last video when I was talking about Super Pac-Man. General Computer Corporation specialized in developing enhancement kits for existing arcade games. They worked on an enhancement for the original Pac-Man, which resulted in new mazes and behavioral patterns for the monsters. The ghosts were redesigned to resemble furry creatures with feet and antennae. Pac-Man was redesigned to include legs, and the result was Crazy Otto. Bally Midway, who had the license to release Pac-Man games in the US, acquired the Crazy Otto kit and retooled the characters to create Ms. Pac-Man. This explains why there are barely any artifacts in the Ms. Pac-Man exhibit room. More information about Crazy Otto can be found in the link in the video description. Ms. Pac-Man features 4 mazes instead of 1, with 3 of them now having 2 sets of warp tunnels. The mazes are colored differently to break the monotony of the visuals from Pac-Man. The additional mazes provide new challenges for navigating through long paths, combined with the altered ghost behaviors which do a better job at tracking down Ms. Pac-Man. Like Pac-Man, the misses can turn faster than the ghosts and move through tunnels quicker than them. Fruits now emerge from tunnels and bounce around the screen. Eat them before they return to the tunnel. New food items include the pretzel, pear, and banana, which replaces the melon, Galaxian, bell, and key. Beginning in round 8, fruits appear randomly. By this point, if a low point fruit such as a cherry or strawberry appears, I will not go out of my way to eat them unless they're close to me. Intermission scenes show the romance between Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, culminating with the arrival of their child, who along with other offspring would be featured in future titles such as Junior Pac-Man and Baby Pac-Man, both of which were developed without Namco's consent. There are many differences between this version of Ms. Pac-Man and the arcade. You must eat 70 and 170 dots in each maze to make the fruits appear, just like in Pac-Man, but in the arcade, fruits appear after eating 64 and 176 dots. The tracks for the intro and intermission scenes were redone. Personally, I prefer the original tracks. There are issues with the audio that plays throughout the maze and when the ghost eyes return to their base. The first couple of notes play and then it resets. Because of this, the pace of the audio during the maze does not change as it does in the arcade when you clear out the dots. The beat of the thumping sound of the bouncing fruit is slower than the arcade and it returns to the tunnels quicker. This iteration of Ms. Pac-Man was used in Namco Museum for the N64, Dreamcast, PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. Now hear for yourself the audio differences. Batting second is Galaxian. This 1979 space shooter was one of Namco's earliest titles and amongst the earliest arcade games to utilize a sizable color display. While Galaxian draws influence from the prior year's hit Space Invaders, it does offer its own take on how the aliens attack. Galaxians are insect-like aliens. They are arranged in a formation consisting of rows of different colored aliens, the last of which guards the Galaxian flagships at the top of the formation. The alien formation moves back and forth horizontally, but doesn't gradually descend to the bottom of the screen or shoot from that position like in Space Invaders. Instead, aliens will leave the formation and swoop down upon your ship, the Galaxip, firing multiple shots at it. Once the aliens are near the bottom, they may approach you from the side, so move away if you can't shoot them down. Once a descending alien leaves the screen, they re-emerge at the top and return to the formation, except when there are a small number remaining. These remaining aliens will continue to descend until shot, except for Galaxian flagships which will escape. Any Galaxian flagships that get away will reappear in the next round alongside the other aliens in formation. At first, aliens slowly descend one at a time, but their numbers, speed, and shots fired pick up during the round and the further you progress in the game. Galaxian flagships often descend with 1 or 2 aliens accompanying it. You will weave through lots of missiles, so avoid the corners to expand your range of movement. The Galaxip fires only 1 shot at a time. Shoot the aliens on each side of the formation at the start of the round to limit the number of missiles and aliens you dodge later. Points for shooting Galaxians in formation increase with each color that is higher in the formation. Blue aliens are worth 30 points, purple aliens are worth 40, red aliens give you 50 points, and the Galaxian flagship is worth 60. Shooting the blue, purple, and red aliens when descending award double points. Shooting a descending Galaxian flagship gives you anywhere between 150 to 800 points, depending on how many red aliens, if any, accompany the flagship and when the alien is shot in that group. No more than 2 red aliens will join the Galaxian flagship in its descent. Compared to its successors, Galaxian is a low-scoring game, so getting the timing right to shoot the alien flagships helps you rack up high scores. There are additional modes of play available when certain codes are entered or milestones achieved. There's a psychedelic version where everything that moves leaves a color trail. There's a turbo mode where the action moves at blazing fast speed. Finally, there's an option to play Galaxian in hard difficulty. The Galaxian flagship would become one of Namco's most recognizable icons outside of Pac-Man, as it has made appearances outside of its series in numerous Pac-Man games, Dig Dug, and as part of a playable minigame in Ridge Racer. The next game we will cover is by far the least known in this set, and that is Phozon. This is a chemistry-themed puzzle game released in 1983. This is one of 2 games in Volume 3 that wasn't released outside Japanese arcades. The only other non-arcade release of this game was as part of Namco Arcade for iOS and Android devices. You control a chemic and the objective is to catch molecs, which resemble molecules that float around the field to form various shapes as indicated in the center of the screen. You do this while avoiding the atomics. They form in the middle of the screen and orbit around the field. Occasionally they split and scatter before rejoining. Atomics have specific traits. For example, blue and cyan atomics can split apart. Atomics shoot alpha and beta rays. Beta rays have a straight trajectory, while alpha rays move in a circular motion. If these rays touch molecs that are attached to your chemic, they break apart. Direct contact to your chemic by an atomic costs you a life. As you progress, the shapes you must form become more complex, thus catching molecs in the right spot becomes tricky. If you catch a molec in a spot that disrupts the shape you are forming, you can release it. You may also want to do this to free up space to catch them in those otherwise tough to fit spots. Molecs are released in order of when they were caught last. Catching a power molec makes you temporarily invincible, as indicated by the spinning molecs. Attack the atomics for extra points, but the amount of attack time gradually decreases. Releasing a power molec or having it hit by an atomic's ray ends your invincibility. Destroyed atomics reform after a few seconds. There are a finite number of molecs to grab in each round, as indicated by a counter at the bottom of the screen. If you do not complete the shape after grabbing the last molec, you restart the round, but you won't lose a life. Completing the shape awards a bonus that increases with each round. If you complete the shape when it's perfectly overlaid on the on-screen target shape, you are awarded an extra life. You start the next round with the completed shape from the previous round and the ability to attack the atomics, except after bonus stages where you start from scratch, and after losing a life where you restart the round with just the completed shape. For some rounds you must release molecs, as it won't be possible to complete the target shape using the layout of the previous one. In the bonus rounds, you fire molecs in 4 directions to destroy atomic formations. Shoot them quickly as they will scatter before escaping. 10,000 points is awarded for shooting all the atomics. Here is another arcade title that did not make its way out of Japan, and that is the Tower of Druaga. This 1984 adventure RPG maze game puts you in the role of Gilgamesh, where you must battle through 60 floors of a tower to rescue the maiden key from the beast Druaga. The main objective in each floor is for Gilgamesh to find the key to open a door leading to the next floor. The floors consist of mazes featuring lots of split paths and dead ends. There's a time limit to complete each floor. The timer also represents the bonus counter, which counts down rapidly from 20,000 as you receive points based on the remaining time for reaching the exit. Once the timer is down to 60, it counts down 1 second at a time while will-o-wisps enter the maze, so hurry up and escape. Gilgamesh encounters an assortment of enemies that fall into typical RPG fare, such as slime, knights, wizards, ghosts, and dragons. These foes appear in different colors, which characterizes their movement and attacks. Slimes slowly move around the floor, with some using magic with different effects. Knights roam the area with their sword. Make sure your sword is drawn when approaching them. Wizards cast spells that can create firewalls, destroy walls, or pass through them, so be ready to block their magic, often multiple at a time and in different directions. Ghosts move quickly through the floor, casting magic. Direct contact with them doesn't harm you. Dragons destroy walls and breathe fire. Gil must keep his sword drawn by holding the attack button to attack the adversaries or to defend against a knight's sword. Your shield blocks enemy spells. You can block spells with your sword drawn if you're facing left and the spell comes from below, as your shield is still visible. Completing specific actions in a floor makes a treasure chest appear. Chests appear at Gil's starting point on the floor. These chests contain dozens of items that aid Gil in his quest, such as a pickaxe to cut through walls, a candle to see ghosts, and jet boots for extra speed, which is a huge plus as Gilgamesh moves slowly. Treasures are single and multiple use items, or they are temporarily or permanently equipped on Gil. Some treasures are mandatory to pick up as you cannot advance unless you have them. A hint book was included with this volume listing the item in each floor, if any, its purpose, and what actions need to be taken for the chests to appear, and if they are mandatory for Gil to acquire. The placement of Gil, keys, exit, and enemies within each floor are random each time you play, providing varying degrees of challenge. I've ended up running low on time and ran into a will-o-wisp because everything was far away from my starting point. This often happens, but if you get the boots on the second floor, you don't have to worry about that. Given the game's difficulty and the potential need to backtrack, there's an option to continue at any floor you visited by holding the attack button before starting the game after losing your last life. Next up is Pole Position 2. This 1983 sequel greatly expanded upon its predecessor, as there are now 4 tracks to choose from, offering different scenery and varying degrees of difficulty. The test track, which is oval-shaped and has a desert backdrop, is for beginner racers. The Fuji Speedway returns from the previous game, which is your normal difficulty track. The seaside track features skyscrapers, and what appears to be the Golden Gate Bridge in the background has tight corners in some spots. The Wonder track, which has amusement park rides in its setting, has sharp and frequent turns. This track is for expert players. The premise remains the same. You complete a qualifying lap to determine your position in the Grand Prix. The amount of time to complete the qualifier varies with each track. You must complete 4 laps to finish the Grand Prix, where you're awarded bonuses for remaining time and the number of cars you passed. The number of required laps can be adjusted in the game options along with the time on the clock. Puddles make a return in this sequel, and running over one drastically reduces your speed, though if you run over at a high enough velocity you get a speed boost. Even the slightest contact with a rival car, sign, or billboard blows up your car, so precise steering is necessary. The Nijicon controller is compatible with this game, but the standard controller does a solid job handling the steering. Billboards were once again modified from the arcade due to licensing involved for showing real-world products. Pole Position 2 in this collection maintains the frame rate from the arcade, unlike the previous game in Volume 1. The voices for starting and completing the qualifying lap are absent, as was the case for Pole Position in Volume 1. The voice samples are not available in the sound test option in the slideshow. You can access additional tracks by going to the test screen and activating the first dip switch. When you restart the game, go to the options window and course will be available. The same 4 tracks are selectable, but they are arranged differently. For example, the test track is now a straight course with no turns. On the extreme end, the seaside course has constant sharp turns, providing the most seasoned of players a challenge. The last game we will cover is my favorite, and that is 1982's Dig Dug. In this maze game, the vegetable gardens have been infested by pukas and figars. It's up to the titularly named character to exterminate these pests. Dig Dug burrows his way in and through the soil with this shovel. You receive 10 points for each block of dirt that is dug. Digging rows or columns of tunnels next to each other leaves thin layers of soil between them. The monsters are found in small pre-made tunnels where they roam back and forth. Pukas resemble tomatoes with goggles. Figars are dragon-like creatures that breathe fire, but only horizontally. Figars will flash before breathing fire. Monsters cannot dig through soil, but they can pass through it by going into Ghost Eye form. The speed in which they move and frequency of going to Ghost Eye form gradually increases with each passing round. It reaches a point where if you don't have fast reflexes, you face certain death as they quickly hunt you down. If things get hairy, go above ground as monsters move slower when they're up there, or dig tunnels with lots of twists and dead ends to confuse their pursuit of you. After a certain amount of time elapses in a round, an alarm sounds which speeds up the monsters. This alarm sounds earlier the further you progress, up to a point where it goes off immediately when the round begins. Dig Dug shoots a harpoon-like air pump to inflate and blow up the pests. To pop these pests, you must inflate them 4 times. Each time you pump them, they grow larger in size. If you take too long to pop them, they will deflate 1 level at a time before resuming movement. While the monsters are inflated, you can walk through them without losing a life. Holding the pump button locks in the harpoon on the enemy, but you can turn away to pump another pest if necessary. You must have quick button mashing skills if several pests approach you at once. The harpoon can pass through thin layers of soil to pump the monsters, but beware as Fygar's fire can pass through these layers, burning you to a crisp. Point values for popping the monsters depends on the layer of soil they're in. Each round has 4 layers separated by color. You receive 200 points if they're blown up in the top layer to include above ground, 300 points for the layer below, 400 points for the next one, and finally 500 points if they're popped in the bottom layer. Popping a Fygar while facing him horizontally awards double points due to the risk involved. When there is 1 monster remaining, he will attempt to escape. Try to defeat it if you can, but there's no penalty if he gets away. In addition to popping the pests, you could drop boulders to flatten them. Each round has several boulders that can be used for this purpose. To drop a boulder, dig directly underneath it and move away. It'll briefly shake before dropping. If you move up while underneath a boulder, it does not drop. Boulders can travel through thin layers of soil. Beware that you can be flattened by boulders, so step away when it drops. Point values for flattening monsters with boulders is significantly higher than popping them. They range from 1,000 points for crushing 1 monster to a whopping 15,000 points for crushing 8 monsters. Here is a diagram I made showing the points earned for crushing the little bastards. Here is a tip for crushing the pests. Leave a depression at the bottom of the tunnel you dig underneath the boulder. When the boulder drops, the monsters will retreat, but they'll end up in the depression. Don't move too far to the left or right from where the boulder drops, or else they will enter Ghost Eye form to escape, or use the horizontal path you made leading up to the tunnel underneath the boulder as they follow your every move. Dropping 2 boulders in a round makes an item appear in the middle of the screen. These items, which are mostly veggies but also include fruits and a Galaxian, are worth between 400 points for a carrot to 8,000 points for a pineapple. At round 18 and every round after, the pineapple always appears. Food items appear once per round, so don't miss out on grabbing them if you want those big scores. So that ends my coverage of Volume 3. Not surprisingly, this set proved to be the most popular, selling more than 2 million copies. The improvements to the museum design and game options combined with the shorter load times made everything easier to navigate compared to the previous 2 volumes. As for the games, Ms. Pac-Man and Dig Dug are amongst my all-time favorites. Galaxian helped usher in an era of colorful arcade games, and Pole Position 2 provided greater replay value and challenge than its predecessor. The Tower of Druaga and Phozon don't have mass appeal, as the difficulty of the Tower of Druaga may be a turn-off for some, and Phozon could be viewed as too weird a game, but companies like Namco needed to test the waters with games that differ from the norm to see if they got a good response. Aside from what I mentioned in Ms. Pac-Man and Pole Position 2, there were minor audio discrepancies in Galaxian and Dig Dug in terms of the pitch and pace of the track during gameplay. This compilation is worth buying, but make sure it includes a Tower of Druaga hint book. For the next video, we will cover Volume 4, whose game lineup goes back to Volume 2 territory, with titles that are even more unknown, so stay tuned for that.